Lawrence Tibbett is still generally regarded as probably the foremost singing actor that America has ever produced, in the operatic context at least. He came from California. He was born in Bakersfield. He and Rosa Poncell were very celebrated as the first two American singers to become great stars at the Met. Not the first to sing leading roles, but the first to become superstars without any European training or experience. They both kind of roughed their way through. Rosa Poncell sang in vaudeville, and Tibbett started a few years later than she did. Sang in small roles for a while. One of the legendary evenings in the history of the Met is when Lawrence Tibbett stepped in for another indisposed baritone on very short notice and had a huge triumph as Ford in Falstaff. But he still sang small roles for a couple of seasons after that. He was a diamond in the rough at that point, maybe partly because he didn't have any European training or experience. But he quickly established himself, became the leading Verdi baritone at the Met throughout the 30s, also became a film star starting in 1930, made several films, one with Grace Moore, another one with Lupe Velez. He also became a great radio star, not just as an occasional guest, but having his own shows week after week after week on the Packard and Chesterfield hours. Sang American popular music, I would say, better than any other male American has ever sung it, with his full operatic voice and yet not sounding like a put-on, very directly and with great expression of in the popular styles that he worked in. One of those was the Black dialect songs, and as you say, one of the several American operas that he starred in the mid-30s at the Met was Greenberg's Emperor Jones, based on the O'Neill play. And Tibbett had a tremendous triumph in it, performing in blackface, of course. Or if you want to talk about makeup, he tried to make himself up and it came out kind of not fooling anybody. Anyway, he had a terrific triumph as that. He did spirituals and Stephen Foster songs on his tours. The title of his memoir, autobiographical memoir, is The Glory Road, which is sort of his signature song. He sang at every recital, on requests and so on. And he just threw himself into the Black dialogue, and I don't think he learned this from teachers he just had an instinctive feeling for it. And I think you'll hear that. I'll be very interested to hear what some of our other singer guests have to say about this. One other thing, in contrast to many of the people who have sung the role of Porgy, most of them, I think, have been mostly basses or bass baritones, with like Kevin, or William Moorfield, or Morris Robinson, or Willard White. Tibbett was a real baritone. It makes a difference in the way the tessitura sounds in a person's voice, and gives him a chance to throw in high notes like the high G at the end of I Got Plenty of Nuttin'. I guess that's all we need to say. I guess Lawrence Winters is the only baritone to take this part that I know of. He's on the earliest complete recording of the piece, who is also a genuine baritone with that lift in the way the voice sits on the music. Not saying that's better than the other, but it's different. So why don't we give it a listen?
So here we go, and this time the conductor is Alexander Smallins, who was the principal conductor of Porgy and Bess in 1935.
Oh, Bess, oh, where's my Bess? Won't somebody tell me where? I ain't care what she say, I ain't care what she done. Won't somebody
that's a knockout. Lawrence Tibbett singing "Oh Bess, Oh Where's My Bess," recorded in 1935 with the orchestra conducted by Alexander Smallens. So, right now, where we are today, you don't have to look in the newspaper to know this. We all know what's going on. What do you guys think about a white guy singing Porgy? Who wants to think of Greg? George, Shirley, Kevin, we'll start with you guys because you guys are not white guys. What do you think? How's it feel?
I would have to respond to that by saying, what do folks think about my singing Des Grieux? If you can sing it, if you can make it believable with your voice, with honesty,
Yeah.
as I believe Tibbett does, then sure. I believe that music belongs to everybody.
Right.
That no one has a corner on the market. And that if I'm going to sing the Duke and Rigoletto, then I've got to sing it with respect for the style, the music, the language, the history. And if someone can sing Porgy, who's not Black, but approach it with respect for the language, the style, and the character, then of course he can sing it.
George, you know what? I think that's not only a beautiful answer, it's a noble answer. Thank you, man. I mean, that touched me when you just said, and you're exactly right. I mean, you sing Schubert, you sing Verdi, you sing what you please because you can sing. Kevin, you feel, I'm sure, pretty much the same way. Let's hear from you for a second.
Yes, I think that music is for everyone, that it doesn't belong to any one group. And that, again, as George mentioned, I've been fortunate that most of the music I do is from the classical period and European tradition of music. And so I hate to think that my color would disqualify me from interpreting that repertoire. I always have to say, though, when you sing Bess, Oh Where's My Bess at the end of that long opera, and you're on your knees and the skin's peeling off, and it's like, okay, here we go, high E's and F's and these incredibly difficult pitches. It's very challenging. It almost feels as if it's written for a different voice. And that it happens so late in the show when you're probably at your most fatigued to have to suddenly come out and connect. But all I know is I just hung on to my Serena and then hung in there for dear life, and sang from my heart.
Back to what Kevin, I go back to what I said before. We've got to bring you home to do Porgy here in the U.S., man. We have to get it. So I got a question for you. I spent more of my life conducting orchestras than often operas, but I love the thing that happens around opera companies. When you put a production together for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, you make a family. You live with a bunch of people. You didn't choose them necessarily, unless, I mean, maybe somebody's nice, but a lot of things you're thrown together. You're staying in the same hotel. You're taking your meals together. You live and breathe each other's life. You make a family.
It's the commonality of that goal. We're all working.
I'm just imagine if you're working with a company of similar African-American great singers, that must have another family feel beyond anything I will ever know.
It's exceptional. It's amazing. And the connections I made with the companies that I performed with, they continue. I just wanted to point out one interesting thing in our times is that it's interesting that Gershwin chose as his protagonist a person who's on his knees. And taking the knee right now has never been a more relevant matter. And so I'm just thinking of the last couple of days that there is an automatic sense of empathy with someone who is on their knees.
Beautiful.
And Joe and I talked about that in terms of the difference between walking up to Bess with a cane or on a wheelchair, as opposed to actually being on your knees and viewing the world from that perspective. It's very different. I did concert versions with the New York Philharmonic and the Nashville Symphony, all the major symphonies in the country, concert version. It wasn't until I got on my knees that I understood Porgy.
Wow. Fantastic.
Could I ask something?
Sure.
I'd like to ask Kevin and George, who I thought spoke very eloquently, both of them, about this. And I remember an article that Simon Estes wrote some years back, I think at the time that he was singing the part. He expressed very similar things, that the music belongs to everyone. And I think probably we all think that. But what about actually doing the role in the theater, doing the character? I remember thinking that at the time, well, that's a great and generous thing for Simon Estes to be saying, but the character is a different thing. And if he is doing it in the theater, is he doing it with makeup? How is he, what do you guys think about that? I'd be really fascinated to hear your take on that.
Well, Kevin, because if I start off, I probably won't let anybody else in for the rest of the night.
Okay, George, I'm the referee. Give us the best 45 seconds.
That ain't going to happen.
Okay.
Look, I mean, theater is theater. When you go to the theater as a spectator, you know you're not in Paris. There's this thing called the suspension of disbelief. Right. Opera, musical theater, it's about, first of all, the voice and the ability of that singer to move you, to make you believe through the singing. I remember years ago, I did Traviata with Caballé, and people were going to say, oh, yeah, oh. She was one of the most believable courtesans that I've ever sung that opera with. She moved with grace, dignity, and yeah, she sang the pants off of it. So, you know, when it comes to looking the part, then the theatrical convention, that's what the costume person is about, the wig mistress, the makeup is about. You use it, and you use it not only to simulate, but you use it for dark skin to raise the level of that dark skin to the place where the lights don't wash it out. And for white singers to do the opposite, so that the features can be seen beyond the footlights. So it has that purpose as well. So you have to, unless you're willing to walk in and say of that 250-pound soprano singing this role that, wow, that's what I want to hear. And yeah, that's great. So if the singer can do it and move you when you're not looking at it, if you can hear that voice move you behind a screen, that voice has a right to move you on stage, made up to look more like what?
Beautiful. Bravo.
Beautifully put. Excellent. I feel a lot is being lost in the modern operatic world because the priority is looks. And you think of all the amazing sounds that we would have missed out if that was the criteria, that they had to look pretty or slender or whatever color. I mean, the music itself has no color. It is just what it is. And if a person is involved and it feels believable and truthful, then that's really what should be happening. That's what I want to hear.
Can I bump in on that? A couple little things. I would rather sing Traviata with Caballé than with someone who looks like they're dying of tuberculosis and sounds like it. Secondly, let me share a little bit of an incident that I had. A new production at the Metropolitan Opera of Manon. And Nikolai Gedda, whom was one of the greatest singers of any time. He sang, I was covering it. And he sang the opening performance and then had to go back to Sweden because his father died. He had to go for the funeral. So I stepped into the role, the second and third performances with Anna Morfo. And I received a review from a critic that I had great respect for, Irving Kolodin. And he wasn't that happy with my performance. He felt that, he commented that my voice wasn't the right size for it, and that I didn't look the part of a French nobleman. So I wrote him a letter. And I really wanted to know what his comment about my voice. I mean, was my voice too big? Was it too small? Because I really wanted to know how he felt, because I respected his ear. And then I also included in that letter a statement saying, in terms of my not looking like a French nobleman, not even thinking about Le Chevalier de Saint-Georges.
Right. I was thinking that as you're talking.
The Dumas brother, the father and son, you know, but they weren't noble, but they were there in France. But I said, if it doesn't bother you that Zinka Milanov really isn't an Ethiopian when she sings Aida, or that Dorothy Kirsten isn't Japanese when she sings Madame Butterfly, then why are you upset over the fact that I don't look like a French nobleman? What does a French nobleman look like? I used to encounter him in the hallways at the Met, Culloden, and he'd always smile. Well, after he received that letter, we passed in the hallway and he didn't even look at me.
Oh.
And life is interesting because about a year later, I went to a performance at one of the local theaters. It was La Boheme of, who's the other guy who wrote it? I can't remember right now.
Leon Cavallo.
Yeah. And my seat, interestingly enough, was right next to Irving Culloden. And I came down the aisle and I said, "Oh, Mr. Culloden, how are you?" Yes, ma'am. Well, he left at the end of the intermission. I don't know if he left because he wasn't enjoying the opera or because I was sitting next to him. Not my choice, but so I found out that the critic doesn't necessarily like to be criticized. But if he hadn't said that about my not looking like a French nobleman, I would
Gotcha.
argue.
I know, man.
So looks, schmooks. I mean, it's not about looks. It's about people. Look, I sang a lot with Birgit Nilsson. I sang a lot of Salome's with Birgit. And she didn't particularly look like Salome, but hell, she could certainly make it sound like Salome should sound. So looks, the whole thing about looks is something that is a huge no-no as far as I'm concerned. You do what is traditional in the theater, you make up. Tibbett made up dark skin. So yeah, you know, you knew anyway that he wasn't African-American, but he did the role and he did it in a manner that was convincing. That's what it should be about, and nothing that has to do with a person's looks, that they got the voice and the artistry and the respect for the piece. They didn't have a right to perform. May I respond? And I agree. You know, I've been asked in the past, how do I feel about this work being reserved for Blacks? And I've said, fine, as long as and until Black artists are considered for roles that would be normally seen as white roles, and be given serious consideration for doing those roles. Say, I move that into contemporary opera. If someone were to write an opera about life in the Irish American community today, a good piece, and it had a great tenor role in it, until I would be considered on the same level as a white tenor for doing that role, then until that happens, I would say that I'm comfortable keeping Porgy and Bess in the realm of Black singers. If we can get to the point where we can look beyond what we look like and listen to the voice and the ability of that voice to express the truth of the character, then I think that restriction has to stay in place for Porgy and Bess. And also to add the fact that one of the problems with Porgy in this society is that there is nothing that has gotten to the point of being accepted, no other work that shows the positive life, the positive parts of Black life. And that's another necessity. Composer, operatic history, I mean, America is nothing if not an operatic plot. And there's plenty to choose from for composers to choose from to show positive side of Black life. And when that begins to happen, and there are works out there that are accepted, that balances the picture and helps to begin the possibility of opening up Porgy to those singers who should sing it and who can sing it with respect and make us believe. But right now, that balance is not there. And until that balance is there, then I say there's got to be the restriction in place on Porgy.
I agree with George on that one. Absolutely. I mean, it provides income for a lot of my colleagues. I mean, it's the opportunity that they have, and if that's taken away, that's a sad thing. I mean, we just have to change the industry. And if anything comes out of this, the George Floyd tragedy, I hope that all of culture, including those people who are charged with presenting opera, will have a broader look and a more inclusive look at African Americans as being part of it. I never felt that I was any less qualified to sing a Mozartian role as a blonde kid from Iowa, you know, who would know nothing about the court of you know, that's being depicted in the life of the actual character. But when you walk on stage, the first thing that identifies you from the audience's viewpoint, sadly, and again from those who are presenting productions, is, oh, there's the Black singer. I mean, and you can't get around that. I never thought that would be something that would be any concern for me as I pursued performing, but I know that that's the initial reaction. Oh, he's singing in German. It's almost suspect. You know, it's like, why are you there? And it's like, well, I've got my pedigree. I've got degrees from a conservatory. I mean, shouldn't that qualify me as well as anyone, as an Iowa farm boy, you know? But sadly, it does disqualify, or it has, and it will probably continue to do so until the whole industry from the top starts to view things differently.